Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk about an evolving sector of the crypto space which I think is new and could show a lot of gains here in the next bull run, depending on how things go. This new and evolving sector of the market is the possible future changes to blockchains. So first, let's discuss what is a blockchain. Some of you may already be aware, but I figured for this video it would be good to discuss what a blockchain is, and then we can go and discuss what a BlockDAG is, which is the topic of this video. If you're not already, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel if you find the information that we're talking about useful, as it really helps me out and it helps me learn more about what you guys find valuable, and I can make more videos according to that. Anyway, let's jump right in. As many of you may already be aware, blockchain is essentially something that moves sequentially along. So as new data is entered into the chain, you are referencing to the previous block, which is essentially what links it together, creating a blockchain. So as you can see, going through, a blockchain is linear. And what can happen now and again is there will be what we call orphan blocks. So if a block is solved at the same time in two different areas, let's say there's a miner in the US and there's a miner in China, both of them find a solution to the blockchain equation at the same time, and possibly there are different solutions, but they're both solutions nonetheless. Technically, both of those blocks would be valid. However, how a blockchain works is the consensus mechanisms used to deal with these orphan blocks are that you essentially wait for the next solution in the chain, and then the longest chain essentially becomes the default. If you are a transaction in the orphan chain, your transaction may have gone through for a second, but then it got replaced as the other chain of which your transaction was not a part of was approved. So as you can see, this causes some sort of limitations as far as accessibility or the speed in which transactions can be completed, because a lot of times you need to wait for subsequent blocks to come through before you can actually see if your transaction was truly completed or not. This issue arises further when we go into chains like Solana, for example, where a new block is being solved every couple of seconds. As there are more miners in the space, this leads to more orphan blocks and more transaction failures. A stat that I had heard a couple of weeks ago, in Solana, about 75% of the transactions fail. And the reason for this is because of this whole orphan block issue that we're dealing with. Part of this is because of what is described as the blockchain trilemma. And what the blockchain trilemma means is there is essentially three things that we are striving for in a decentralized network, and that is security, scalability, and decentralization. Usually you can only have two of these things. You need to pick which two you want, and then the third one suffers. So as we can see in the case of Bitcoin specifically, we can see that security is great. It's gone for, I think 15 years at this point without any sort of security incident. Also, decentralization is relatively good, as this is something that is mined worldwide, and the entire world essentially participates in the mining and contribution of the Bitcoin network. As we know, the scalability of Bitcoin is limited. This is where we get into the issue of people considering Bitcoin as more of a store of value instead of an actual decentralized payments network like it was initially intended. A potential solution to this is a recent development in the space called a BlockDAG. What a DAG stands for is a directed acyclic graph. Essentially, it's a really complicated math thing, but what we can see is this is essentially what a BlockDAG looks like. Where a blockchain is very linear, a BlockDAG is more of like a web. A DAG proceeds forward in a focused direction, though not necessarily linear. What we can see here is that some blocks have multiple parents and also multiple child blocks. This is because of the mechanism of how a directed acyclic graph works. This is something where we can see this could be a solution to the security, scalability, and decentralization problem. However, the only issue with BlockDAG are that they're so far, very young and as of yet quite unproven. Blockchains have been around for a while. They're fairly straightforward, and they've been proven for, years and years at this point. BlockDAGs, however, are not. So while the technology is novel and it may actually be, quite game changing, at this point, there just isn't the history behind BlockDAGs as there are in blockchains currently. Before we continue on, if you are enjoying the content, please go ahead and like and subscribe. This really helps the channel out. Moving on, we can talk about the pros and cons of both Kaspa specifically and then Bitcoin. So what we can see is that with Kaspa, Kaspa has this new and innovative solution that could potentially solve all of the blockchain trilemma issues by essentially moving away from a blockchain completely. However, it is unproven and it's still very much in development so far. One thing that we should keep an eye out on is the development of Kaspa. Kaspa as a network is still early on in its life cycle, and there's a lot of development and new innovations that are coming to the chain. What we can see, and I think what would be helpful is reframing maybe how Bitcoin versus Kaspa works. Kaspa could essentially solve potentially, the blockchain issue, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin is going to be replaced. So, I guess as an answer to the question of will Kaspa replace Bitcoin, I would say probably not. But that doesn't mean they both can't have their own uses and be very good at both of their uses individually. Bitcoin essentially is becoming more widely understood as a store of value rather than a transaction or payments network. And so I think this leaves the door open for Kaspa to essentially be very successful in the sense that they could actually be that scalable payments and transactions network that Bitcoin is meant to be, but currently is unable to fulfill. One thing that I wanted to go into is some current updates surrounding Kaspa if you would like to follow along with their development and the innovations that they bring. I'm going to direct us back to the one of the Kaspa sites. It's called KRC20. KRC20 is essentially like the token protocol that exists on Ethereum to allow tokens to be created on the Kaspa network. So similar to Ethereum, ETH serves as the payment system or the gas for the Ethereum network. The Kaspa coin does the same thing for the Kaspa network. However, you can create tokens on top of the Kaspa network, similarly to how you can do that on Ethereum. Most of the larger altcoins you may have heard of are altcoins, or I guess tokens that exist on top of the Ethereum network. So you can think of things like Immutable X, Polygon, Shiba Inu. I mean, there's all sorts that exist on the Ethereum network. Well, this KRC protocol is going to be essentially that same sort of thing for the Kaspa network. These have not actually come out yet. They're still in development, but this would be a space that I would very much keep an eye on if you're interested in the development of Kaspa and following along with the progress. The success of the KRC20 tokens could very well define, I guess, the legacy of Kaspa as a project as a whole. So it also could be very exciting. And from an investment perspective, there could be this could be a very great opportunity on the coin itself, as well as various tokens that come out within the network. If we're in on the network early enough, we could maybe find some potential gems that can provide some really, really nice returns. Again, this is not investment advice. As I'm hoping you're seeing so far, this is a very speculative project. It's still in development. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. There's also a lot of things that could go right. And so this is where you should do your own research, try and form a developed opinion on your own, and then you can use that to make a decision as to what you want to do. Anyway, this is all I wanted to go over today, to dive in a little bit more about the innovations that are occurring on the Kaspa network and potentially where we could see them going into the future. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.